listening to episode 325 of Life Radio. I am Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Jayton Miller. I interviewed Jayton 4 to 5 years ago, and I wanted to have him back to catch up with him, anything new that he's learned, and also just to share really practical information that people can implement. On my social media platforms, I share a mixture of really in-depth, complicated, nuanced stuff that only people deep in the health world that nerd out about it would know about. But I also like to provide basic information for people that are just getting into it, that are still wrapping their head around the complexity that is human health. So in this show, Jayton simplifies it, shares a lot of basics that I think we all need to be reminded of. We were talking about how we have in common a major stress event in the last couple of years, and then you combine that with physically moving around and changing homes, and you have a recipe for disordered eating. And it's really helpful in those times to hear repeatedly the information that Jayton's going to share in this show. Jayton talks about why you want to track your body temperature and pulse, especially when you're just getting into this. He shares his thoughts on polyunsaturated fatty acids, like omega-3, and his thoughts on cod liver oil. And I share my theory about cod liver oil. I ask him his thoughts on walking after a meal, eating before you go to bed. He talks about if you're waking up at night between midnight and 4 a.m., what you can do to remedy that. His thoughts about coffee, what to do if someone doesn't have an appetite. And then I ask him listener questions, including his thoughts on natural desiccated thyroid and Cynomel, Cynoplus. How can women optimize their nutrition during the postpartum period? Do PUFAs and skincare cause damage? And his thoughts on the sugar diet. So enjoy the show. Here is Jayton Miller. Okay, Jayton Miller, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Appreciate the time.
When was the last time I had you on? It must have been, 4 or 5 years ago, right?
Man, it was a long time ago. I want to say probably 2021. Early 2021, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Well, I was just telling you, I appreciate your information, your consistency, just the grounded, balanced information. It can get really dogmatic in these different health camps. And I just like the way that you share information. It's refreshing and simplified as well, which we're going to talk about, because I think a lot of people try to make a name for themselves by like making things really complicated, using really big words, just diving into only the nuance, which the nuance of health is fun for people like us. But for the average person, like up here in North Idaho, the contractors and carpenters and plumbers and electricians I work with, they just want to know the basics. They don't need to know all the molecular pathways of how every supplement works.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I experienced a lot of challenges trying to communicate these ideas with family and friends and things like that over the years. And one of the things that I had to kind of reflect on was how I was communicating those ideas and what the audience was that I was speaking to. So using a lot of $10 words and talking about these complex scientific topics might serve myself, but it's not serving the people that I'm trying to communicate the ideas to. And so over the years, one of my primary objectives has been to figure out how I can communicate these ideas in as simple and elementary way as possible. That way people can get the most bang for their buck whenever they come across this information and be able to use it in a tangible way rather than getting confused by all the science mumbo jumbo that can kind of come along with it sometimes.
I'm trying to remember, did you experiment like myself with diets? I know a lot of people did keto, and I did it multiple times.
Yeah, so I didn't do keto. So whenever I really started looking into nutrition and stuff, it was back in high school whenever I was trying to gain weight for football. And so I was just trying to pack on the pounds, just eating as much as I could. And then after I got done with football my senior year, I went on a classic bodybuilding style diet. I lost probably like 50 pounds in a matter of a few months. And during that time period, I just destroyed my health. So, as you can probably imagine, doing something that quickly and making such a drastic change that fast, um, my thyroid was in shambles, my testosterone was in shambles, and I was going through all this at 18, 19 years old. And eventually it got to the point to where doctors wanted to put me on TRT and thyroid medication. And so I did the TRT for a little bit. And after, doing, taking a couple of injections and feeling like a drug addict for a little while for, um, I guess a less, good way to explain that. I decided that I need to figure this out for myself, and I was going to University of North Texas over in Denton, studying biology. And so, at that same time, I came across the work of Ray Peat, um, and have just kind of taken it off since there. It was a really interesting time in my life because everything that I was learning that was making a positive impact in my health from Ray's work, I was learning the exact same thing at the exact same time in all of the biology and chemistry and all the classes that I was taking while I was going to school. So um, it was kind of like this awesome um, evolution, so to speak, of knowledge and of coming into myself and figuring things out. So yeah, super grateful for Ray's work and for that time period.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of the big light bulb moments for me when I found repeat, it must have been, yeah, I think it was 2019, early 2019 or something like that, late 2018, was the glucose is the primary fuel of the cell. Because I remember hearing that in nutrition class as well in college. And it's it, it's funny that the ketogenic people, say, well, your body can make it though, and then we take it further, and they push back on this as well, where they're like, well, we say, well, making your own glucose, you have to break down muscle tissue and fat, and there's these hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, that facilitate that, and it's a catabolic process that has these downstream negative effects. And I can't remember. I think I listened to Bart K or someone had like a counter argument to that. But
Mm,
uh, I can say experientially, using glucose as the primary fuel feels way less stressful than just intermittent fasting, which I have a lot of experience with. And I think you and I, before we hit record, we were talking about, like, you've been moving around a lot. I've been moving around a lot, really the last 5 years, but just finding my ideal environment, I became obsessed. Like, where should I be for the long term? And I finally figured that out, which is off grid, 100% off grid in the forest of North Idaho. But in that transition of like moving around and stuff, as you can, I'm sure, relate, there is that challenge of being consistent um, with, not only sugar and carbs, but just calories and food in general, to where I was using like essential amino acid powders and tablets, which are great. That's like the closest thing to me to a meal replacement, where it kind of takes away some of that hangry. But then there's like the glucose carb side that I'm not getting.
mm,
So uh,
yeah. Yeah. Whenever I think about that, one of the things that I consistently come back to is like um, ATP production. Whenever you are utilizing glucose to make ATP, CO2, and water, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck in the amount of energy that you produce throughout that process. Um, in magnitudes of 10x in a lot of cases or more. So that's kind of the thing that I keep thinking about whenever I hear people kind of go back and forth on that energy production stuff.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, and I've been playing around with like I interviewed Steve Scott of Carbogenetics, this CO2 inhaler, which
Oh,
this is
nice.
trending in the repeat community, which is funny, but it's great. It's just a little device you hook to a CO2 tank. I have a huge one from Ozark, like the O2 and CO2 tank place welding store, but you can use like a soda stream or whatever. It just wouldn't last as long. But yeah, I've been combining this, breathing carbon dioxide while drinking coffee or after drinking coffee or after having some carbs while I'm working at the computer. It feels amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. I would be curious as to what your experience is with wound healing and things like that. I know that encapsulating your tissues in the CO2 is very healing. So,
Speak
have
to
you
that.
experimented with that at all?
Yeah, yeah. So I gave away my suit because my friend uh helping my friend's husband with cancer, and I just gave her my suit, and she experiences inflammation on her skin, rashes and stuff like that, and just wearing that suit with the transcutaneous, it's called carbon dioxide. Not to get into big words here. No, I'm sure we'll say some in the show. Kind of going back on the first part, but yeah, it takes away her inflammation, she was saying, almost immediately. And for me, 30 minutes bathing in CO2 gas uh, feels like kind of like a meditation, just feel like instantly calm. And same thing with breathing it too. I would say the suit is just more pronounced.
Hmm.
But yeah, for those that don't know what we're talking about, like bag breathing is something that Ray Pete would talk about, right? Is
Mhm.
on how the mechanism on how that works. And um, it's really increasing glucose utilization, isn't it? That's
Mhm.
one of the ways, but it's also like a balancing. Carbon dioxide is just like a master balancer in the body, helping with so many things.
Yeah, definitely. I think, one of the primary things that it does is just helps you to use oxygen better and helps with moving oxygen in and out of your cells and in and out of your body in an easier way. So I feel that's kind of like where most of its benefits comes from in terms of increasing energy and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, super cool. I know you focus more on the food side of things, right? More than like the biohacks and even supplements. Do you get into supplements, talking to people?
Yeah, I do like supplementation. I'm very conservative in my approach whenever it comes to supplementation. I worked in the supplement industry for about 8 years, and I had one of the things that I did was keep tabs on manufacturing processes and supply chains and stuff like that for a little while. Um, and so. I'm very skeptical about the manufacturing process of a lot of different supplements and stuff like that, especially whenever people don't know how to test or what to test for, or just not really having a relationship with a particular wholesaler of products and stuff like that, not knowing what they're putting in there. And then, not showing things like certificate of analysis to prove that it has what it says it has in there and it doesn't have what it's not supposed to have in there, things like that. Um, you know, mold testing, heavy metal testing, all those kinds of things are things that I like to see. Um, but the liquid supplements are something that I tend to have more of an affinity for at this point, just because the encapsulations and the powders, they have a lot more room for contamination in the manufacturing process, in my opinion. Um, so I don't shy away from them completely, but liquid supplements are typically what I opt for first. And with a very conservative approach. I think that a lot of people who get into this space or just get into health in general, they kind of throw the kitchen sink of supplements at what they're dealing with and don't really understand what it is that they've added in or taken out that is actually making a difference for them. And so, taking a very slow, stair-stepped approach to adding in one supplement at a time, understanding the impact that that has on your system, making sure that you're having a journal or tracking your pulse and temps or just having some kind of way to understand over time what the impact is of that specific supplement is for you, I think is really important. And so I don't shy away from the supplements as much, but it's not something that I talk about extensively right now on the social media and stuff like that, just because it's a very nuanced thing, and I think that there's a lot of high leverage things that people can take advantage of before adding in the supplements.
And you're not against vitamin A, right? Because you probably know big anti-vitamin A movement.
uh, you got to have that liver. I mean, unless you're avoiding liver, then you can't avoid the vitamin A, and it's extremely important. So I don't think that you should get rid of it. I mean, Ray's talked about it extensively too, the benefits of it, the necessity of it. I think something that a lot of people get lost on whenever it comes to the Ray Peat stuff is the fact that um, you need to eliminate micronutrient deficiencies so your body has the raw materials that it needs in order for all of the processes in the body to happen correctly. And so vitamin A is one of those things that you need a sufficient amount of. You don't need too little, you don't need too much, you need just the right amount. Um, and the amount is different based on the person, based on their circumstance, based on how they feel and the different reactions that they get adding in more vitamin A. But I think unless you're doing something extreme on the nutritional side of things, you're not gonna get too much vitamin A, and your body's gonna utilize what it needs or break down what it doesn't and pass it out of the system.
Hmm. Do you put a lot of emphasis, or not a lot of emphasis, but do you take into account genetic differences? Because I've had a few shows on that, and I think, like a lot of these camps, like the hair tissue mineral analysis or whatever, you can take it too far to where, genetics
Yeah,
is the important thing, or mineral balancing is the most important thing, or to me,
yeah,
not like one most important thing. It's all important.
definitely. I think, just ensuring on a consistent basis that those deficiencies aren't present within the system is the most important thing. And then figuring out over time um, what you tend to burn through more of, so to speak. So, for instance, like vitamin B6, that's a very common one that a lot of people burn through very quickly, depending on what their um, body is utilizing it for and things like that. And I mean, there's a lot of people that have to supplement a pretty decent amount in order to get consistent sufficiency of it and not be deficient in it. So I
Making
think that
GABA, right? It's one thing. I mean, there's a lot of making
what's,
them making GABA, that neurotransmitter, and if
yeah,
alcoholics, that can be less, or a lot of things can. Well,
yeah. I mean, all of the B vitamins are extremely important. B6 is just an example there. William Walsh, I don't know if you've read his book, Nutrient Power, but um, he's corrected like full-blown mental health disorders with just providing B6 back into the system because there was an extreme deficiency in some people. Um, whether I think I can't remember if it was mental retardation, like some forms of autism or even like um, schizophrenia or something like that. But yeah, just from B vitamin therapy. So, and a lot of that, the root cause of that was just being deficient in that vitamin. So, making sure those deficiencies aren't present is key.
yeah, going back to orthomolecular medicine, and people know Linus Pauling, but there was Abram Hoffer, there's Carl Pfeiffer, and they were using uh, niacin, not nicotinamide or niacinamide, uh, that I sell and take myself. I take like 1,500 milligrams of nicotinamide a day, but they were also using zinc, high dose ascorbic acid, and those three, specifically the AA and copper, were uh, were really helpful. Or AA and zinc were really helpful for copper overload, which a lot of people had at that time. But
Mm,
try not to make the podcast too too complicated because we were trying to keep it kind of overview. But I think it's
yeah,
good
definitely.
here and there some things.
Yeah, it's hard not to dive into the things that are fun to talk about for us, but Yeah, I think it's important to have some simple tactics for people to be able to utilize when they're on this journey for sure.
While we were talking about vitamin A, this is a really contentious topic, cod liver oil. And I was against it for many years. And then living in the North, where it gets into the negatives, like real winters, uh, like really cold temperatures, I I'd go to the time and I was going out and I felt just really cold in my extremities and I was eating sufficient carbs, I was eating sufficient protein, I was eating enough, and I still couldn't resist the cold. Just didn't feel like I was warm enough. And then I added in the cod liver oil and it helped. And I looked into like deer and caribou and how they consume foods like mosses that then give them arachidonic acid, which then act as like antifreeze for their cells. And so that was kind of my inspiration, like, oh, it's antifreeze. So
Hmm.
I've been kind of living this. I don't know if it's like a PUFA, a seasonal PUFA lifestyle or what you would call it, but where I kind of like, I guess almost like a bear, right? Where it's like you give yourself quasi insulin resistance in the winter and have more PUFA, and in the summer you like PUFA deplete. That's kind of how I'm living up here the last couple of years, and it feels like it's serving me well. Um, just kind of theory that I have because I know a lot of animals practice that, and although we don't like, I don't crawl in a hole and hibernate in the winter, where you, yeah, I don't know how accurate it is, but it just kind of makes sense to me. So I don't, and I'm not like downing like a bottle a day of cod liver oil in December. It's just I I just consume more of it, and with that I also increase my vitamin E intake with it
Okay.
out. So I don't know. That's just my theory, but I haven't seen anyone talk about that. So
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't either. One of the things that Ray talks about in nutrition for women, he actually references cod liver oil and its potentially toxic effects. Um, I don't think that's from the vitamin A specifically. I think that is just from those unsaturated oils. Um, I would be curious what would happen if you tracked your pulses and temps during that time and how those were impacted from it. Um, yeah, that's interesting. It could be kind of like a beneficial stress response, so to speak, like the type of stress response that you need to be resilient to the cold, maybe. Um, I don't know. That's interesting. That's an interesting experience.
yeah, because you hear, years ago, like uh, it takes 3 to 4 years to deplete PUFA in the tissues, to clear it out with saturated fat and vitamin E consumption. But I don't know what that was based on. I think it was one study or something. And so I wonder, how many variables are involved. Like, can you PUFA deplete in a couple months? If you've just built up for, you know 4 or 5 months and then you deplete, could it maybe
Hmm.
two?
I think a lot of it also has to do with how much body fat an individual has on their body too. Um, just less tissue to work through overall. So if you're relatively lean, I could imagine that it could happen fairly quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, let's see uh where else can we go with this here?
Yeah. Well, I guess, one of the first things that I tend to see with people whenever they're kind of coming into this way of eating or living um, is the mental side of things. So, the mental barrier for people is one that is extremely impactful that they overlook whenever getting into this, you know, health-centric approach, so to speak. Um, and I think that a lot of it has to do with they want to rush the process. So they want to be healthy now. They want to start eating this way and within a few days start to feel these dramatic changes that everybody talks about, um, and things like that. Um, and the body does not have the ability to tell the difference between stressors in the mind and stressors in your diet or stressors in your environment. Um, all of the stressors that you come up against, mental and physical, will create a stress cascade throughout the body. And so you need to be able to put just as much effort in healing the mind as you do in healing the body. If you have a tremendous amount of negative self-talk, if you have relationships that are cutting you off at the knees, if you've got just a constant kind of doom and gloom perspective on the world, and don't have the belief that you can actually heal, you can have all of the nutrition therapy that you want. You can take all the hormones that you want. You're only going to get so far until you address the mental aspect of healing. So that's one that I see quite a bit, and I think that people overlook fairly often. And within the repeat community, orthorexia is a major problem. Having an excessive obsession with healthy food and making sure that you try to do everything perfect, that's just as damaging as going and just having one or two French fries in a meal. Like you're stressing your body out big time with those thoughts, and so that's something that's worth addressing and doesn't need to be overlooked.
I love that. Yeah, before hit record, I was telling you my constipation story of how that was just being in a situation in my life and making a hard decision within a day. My bowel movements, my intestinal function was back to normal. And whether it's that or loose stools, either way could be caused exclusively by mental stress. I mean, I was taught that, which is incredible because, I mean, if we're not digesting our food properly, that's kind of like the beginning of health, right? I mean, you need nutrients to function and detoxify and all that. So that was really eye-opening to me to see. I mean, really just like within an instant, that turnaround without changing anything in my
Mm,
diet movement or anything like that.
yeah. Um, I'd be curious, were there any internal thoughts that changed during that time period other than the external stress that was present? Were there any ways that you talked to yourself differently or saw things differently after that time period?
Uh, yeah, maybe just recommitting to living a peaceful life where like kind of recognizing if I'm just chronically tense, which I think we've all had in our life, but it's the recognition that's the important part because it's gonna
Mm,
come and go. So if you can like learn what it feels like and the thoughts you have while you're having those feelings, then you could stop it and redirect.
definitely. Yeah, I think I don't know if you've heard of Anthony DeMello, but he has a book called Awareness, and he calls it shining a light on it. So if you can shine a light on those negative thoughts, identify them, they can usually pass from there because you've been able to point them out, so to speak.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's amazing too, because I've tried like sensory deprivation float therapy at home and 900 pounds of Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate in the darkness. And it's just funny how that can be useful for some people, like military with PTSD and stuff, doing several rounds of that. But sometimes it's just making, a decision, uh, you know, like we were just talking about, and that could end the tension and you don't need sensory deprivation floating anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say one that is probably at the core of all of this is just in the belief that you have the ability to heal from where you're at. Like your body is an amazing organism. It's extremely complex and it has the ability to adapt to whatever situation that you put it in, whether that's a mental situation or a physical situation. Um, and you can allow it to heal by giving it the right environment and the right things to fuel it. Um, and you need to believe in that if you're going to make progress in this journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, super cool. Yeah, a lot of people feel stuck with chronic ailments, and you probably heard it over the years of, oh, I've tried everything, I've tried this and that, and I've just given up and done all these functional medicine tests, and just all these different directions. But I mean, that's the internet, right? That's social media and Instagram and Facebook. It's so many people just trying to sell you their perspective. What I try to do on my podcast here and just with how I share information in general is just make it like as broad as possible, as adaptable as possible, talking about just turning off your Wi-Fi at night, how to make that easier and things like that, that will definitely, across the board help everybody with not a lot of effort.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and whenever it comes to the bioenergetic community or Ray Peat's work, on a nutritional standpoint, if you were just to do two things, I guess. One would be eliminating the polyunsaturated fats, like just not making a concerted effort to not have more than what is necessary in your diet. I think that that's where some people get carried away as they try to eliminate it 100%, which is almost impossible. Um, but just don't add extra polyunsaturated fats into your diet. Um, and then outside of that, you need to eat frequently and keep your blood sugar in check. So, frequent balanced meals throughout the day so your blood sugar doesn't dip. Because whenever that blood sugar dips down, there's a stress hormone response. So whenever your blood sugar dips, it goes to your liver for some sugar reserves. If there's no reserves in your liver, then you're going to have a stress response to start turning other tissues into sugar so your body can utilize that sugar for energy. So eating those meals on a consistent basis, you know, different people can go a different amount of time between meals before they start experiencing hypoglycemia. But usually anywhere from 2 to 4 hours is what you're looking at in terms of a cadence of eating. And I always recommend just balancing it out, have a little bit of protein, some carbohydrate, and maybe just a touch of fat. That's really all that you need to think about whenever it comes to those meals throughout the day. Um, you can start to get into the nitty gritty of like amino acids and, making sure that there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. It's kind of endless, but those are kind of two high leverage factors that I see whenever it comes to nutrition specifically is eliminating the PUFAs, eating balanced meals frequently, and then making sure that you're eating enough throughout the day too. There's a lot of people that undereat and don't realize it. One of the things that you could do is just track what you're eating for like 2 or 3 days in Chronometer. Just take a look at it, see how many calories you're eating, and understand what the balance of macronutrients is, the amount of protein and carbs and fats that you're currently getting. And then make sure that you're getting enough total calories. And if you're not supporting yourself with energy in, your body's not going to be able to produce energy without the energy coming in from food and things like that. And so that's another crucial thing that I see is people just don't eat enough, whether it's they get distracted at work, they skip lunch, or they snack like a bird throughout the day and just aren't having large enough meals. That's something else that I see too. So they might eat frequently, but they're just not eating enough. So those are some big ones on the nutritional side that I see.
It's awesome. Yeah, I have a bunch of hens and a rooster, and for the last several months, I've been getting probably 8 or 9 eggs a day, fertilized eggs, which is awesome. And they get like leftover steak and pasta, and they eat good, and like dehydrated premium soldier fly, larvae and mealworms and stuff. So I've been doing like soft boiled eggs a lot, and that's just nice to keep my protein up. And carbs is tricky. I actually planted just 25 fruit trees out here in my orchard. So I'm hoping in the next couple years I'll have amazing, right outside my door, local fruit to just snack on all day.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm too extreme up here because I know like up here in North Idaho, the health food store, all the fruits from Mexico. And so I think that's where a lot of the quantum health circadian people uh, kind of spread a lot of fear with eating and carbs and fruit. You know, you probably heard Jack Cruz talking about the harms of eating a banana in New York in December or something, or January. How it's gonna, the photons in it, the blue light sends your body a signal that it's summer, something crazy. But the
Yeah,
sugar is
that's
an important part. Right?
yeah. That's one of those things that's just way too far down the rabbit hole for it to like really make a tremendous impact on the health of the individual, especially, you know, somebody coming off a standard American diet or like a low carb diet or something like that. They just need simple, tangible things that they can utilize. Um, you start getting into all the different magnetisms of different foods and things like that. You've gone too far. You've lost too many people, and you're going to create a lot more confusion for people than you're actually helping them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, finding carb sources that work for you. I mean, raw milk is probably my favorite up here year round. I'm very fortunate at even big grocery stores up here. You can buy A2, grass fed raw cow's milk and
Mm.
goat's milk too, although I prefer cow's milk in the store in glass. And that to me feels amazing. But
Yeah, you got a good maple syrup source up that way too.
I just order, I think, like 16 gallons at a time online of that premium stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, that's a major carb source year round is the maple syrup. And it's funny, I think over the years I've tried store bought when I'm traveling or whatever, and it just tastes like water compared to what I'm used to now.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly I love maple syrup. So one of the things that I'll do, and you mentioned getting in a little bit more protein, I always keep like a tub of unflavored gelatin already made in my fridge. And I'll just take a big cube of that and I'll toss it in my coffee whenever I make it. I'll pour that hot coffee over the top and it dissolves really, really well. So um, that's one of the things that I do. I'll mix that in with like some hot meals and stuff too. It's a really good way to get some extra glycine into the diet without having to go out of your way to snack on a bunch of Jello or dust your meat with a bunch of powder and stuff like that all the time.
Isn't there two different types? I forget there's the old brand that's in the can, right? I can't remember the name of that.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's Great Lakes is a pretty common one. I think that if you can just find a good, clean source of grass-fed gelatin, that you know the company has done their due diligence to make sure that it's high quality, go ahead and get it. I don't think that it's going to be a big issue in terms of brands and stuff like that, as long as the company is responsible.
yeah, for years I was making the homemade gummies with fruit juice and CNH white sugar and gelatin, and it was great. But it definitely, wasn't a snack on its own. It had to, for it to work, you had to have it with an actual meal,
Hmm.
eggs or whatever. And that's where it seemed to work a lot better and give me a lot more support.
Definitely. Yeah. I really do feel like glycine is supposed to be part of a full protein source. Or at least a relatively full protein source, maybe deficient in tryptophan or something like that. But yeah, in my experience and with people that I've talked to, usually like implementing gelatin or glycine with some other kind of whole protein and the carbohydrates um, tends to work well because it digests super, super fast. Um, and I feel like with just the gelatin and the sugar, it kind of causes a quick spike and crash for me. Like I just burn through it really, really fast.
Hmm. What I've done, I think a couple winters ago, like snowmobiling, I would have like my venison jerky and the Jello homemade, and I would eat both, and that would feel pretty balanced if I'm out and about doing stuff.
Yeah, that's a great hunting snack for sure.
What are your thoughts on walking after a meal? Because you were talking about keeping blood sugar stable, and I think a lot of people on both sides, keto and the balance people, a lot of people online talk about going for a short 5 to 10 minute walk after you eat. And I need to be more consistent with that because I got in a good routine. I have a great, beautiful walk around my lake if Mama Moose isn't there with her calf, which is really dangerous. But I have some great nature walks. It's completely quiet, which is just such a blessing compared to what I've learned. You know, even living rural, it's hard to find peace and quiet in the
Hmm.
very lucky if you have that. So to have that combination of no headphones in, you're just hearing birds and uh, insects and frogs and nature sounds and walking.
Yeah, I think walking after a meal is fantastic. I think that the effects that it has on blood sugar and digestion are very underestimated. One of the things that I think that people struggle with if they're very hardcore repeat is that they're trying to track their temperature and their pulse after every single meal. Um, if you're doing that, um, know that your temperature is going to be slightly elevated from getting that movement in. But then also, once you get back from a walk, just sit down for 10 or 15 minutes before you take that pulse reading, and that'll give you a more accurate reading of that resting heart rate. Um, but that's really the only thing that I see people have a challenge with, other than, being at work or not being able to get outside and go for a walk. But um, I highly recommend it. I love walking after a meal. I think that walking in general is just healing alone. The more walking that I can get in, the better on a daily basis. I love to get outside and be in nature, have some sun hit my skin, um, get out there with my dog and play with him. That has some benefits in and of itself. And me and my wife, we do a little bit of acro yoga or something like that. So sometimes we'll just get outside and go for a walk, find a good spot to lay down and start tossing each other around a little bit.
That's cool. Uh, you mentioned body temperature and pulse a few times in the show. For people that are unfamiliar, can you just give an overview of that and how to do it, um, why it's useful, stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. So, one of the things whenever it comes to metabolic health in general is understanding how energy is being produced in the system. And so, one of the ways that you know that a sufficient amount of energy is being produced is whether or not you have the ability to maintain a certain range of heat. Specifically, usually in the at the beginning of the day in the mornings, um, people can dip down to like 97.8, somewhere around there. And then by the afternoon, you want to make sure that you're around 98.6 degrees. And that's Fahrenheit. I think it's 37 degrees centigrade or centigrade. I'm not really sure. Um, but taking the heart rate is also really informative of whether or not different adrenal hormones are active. So if you have a really fast, high resting pulse, that's indicative that stress hormones could be too high. So, if it's over like 90 to 95 beats per minute, you're looking at excessive adrenal hormones. If it's below, say, 70, then your body doesn't have enough energy to be able to pump the heart at a rate to where it can properly supply the body with different nutrients deep within the tissues. And that's one of the reasons that you see cold hands and cold feet and things like that in a hypothyroid state. It's because you're not supplying the heart with enough energy to be able to excel that blood through the system and get it all the way out to those extremities. Or at least that's my understanding of it. I don't know if you have anything else to add on top of that.
Sounds good to me. No, I think you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, but the temperature and pulse are a really good snapshot into what your metabolism currently looks like in real time. Instead of having to rely on, say, a quarterly blood test or something like that with TSH, T3, T4, a lot of people don't even look at T3 nowadays. It's just, honestly, a lot of people only look at TSH, which is not really a good indicator of what's going on. It can give you a little bit of clues as to what's happening in the system, but day-to-day tracking over time of the pulse and temp gives you a really good understanding of how your body's producing energy. And in the morning, it's really good to understand like how your body handled the stress of fasting throughout the night and kind of where your hormones are upon waking. And then later in the afternoon, it gives you a really good hint as to how you're actually using the food that you're eating to produce energy and stuff like that, and whether or not you're able to pull down those stress hormones from, say, fasting throughout the night, or whether or not you're stuck in a sympathetic state throughout the day. It can be a really good, can give you a really good understanding of what's going on there.
That's great. And I've heard like years ago, tracking your temperature in the armpit is better than like the mouth. Is that true?
Um, I think whenever it comes to measuring, like as long as you're measuring the same way every single time, then that's what is gonna work. I've actually heard the opposite. I've heard that the oral temperature is a little bit more accurate than the armpit, just because it's a little bit closer to the core. But yeah, I think as long as you're tracking the same way over time, then you're going to be able to see the changes that are being made.
Meanwhile, isn't Brian Johnson's body temp like super low, like 90, 97? Yeah, I don't know. It's like a lizard.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I've seen some low temperatures, even on myself. Whenever I was at my worst and I was extremely hypothyroid, I was down in the 96s. I think that one time I got a reading of like 96.1 or something like that. It was way down there. And I've heard a couple people reference, I don't know how accurate that is, but like for every degree lower that you are in body temperature, your metabolic rate is said to have decreased by like 20%. Um, so it's the temperature has a significant impact on the body.
Yeah, I started using, I think it was late last year, uh, something called the bed jet. It uses like a lot of these devices use water to circulate it on your bed to cool you down. This one is basically just a fan, and so it's like a blower that blows air uh, either under your sheet, or I bought their cotton sheet, and it basically blows air into this sheet. So I have like a grounding sheet under me, and then this sheet above me that has cool air blowing into it.
Mm.
You could set it on a timer, so I go to bed cool. And since I'm 100% off grid, I don't have like super climate controlled bedroom, with a digital thing on the wall. So I'm relying on like cracking the windows and fans and stuff like that. And so like I think it tends to be like mid to high 70s this time of year when I go to bed. So I turn that on, and just that little bit of coolness directly on my body helps so much. But what's funny is I usually wake up and I'm super cold if I don't have it, if it's still going. So I have to turn it off, which I think is kind of, we're supposed to kind of go to bed cooler, right? And then wake up uh, warmer. At least that's what I've heard. That's been my experience.
Yeah. Um, um, yeah, I tend to sleep. I tend to have disrupted sleep if I'm too cold or too hot. Like, I definitely I have problems with sweating, so I get super sticky at night too. So that definitely makes an impact. And then my wife is basically another heater, so I could imagine that that cool sheet might be beneficial in that case because yeah, it's very easy to overheat, especially during the summertime. And I can imagine being old school like yourself. It's probably you got to get creative to cool down in those hot summer months.
Yeah. What's nice is it's not very expensive too. I think like 500 or 600 compared to other like chili pads, some of these other things, Eat Sleep that Huron promotes. I mean, thousands of dollars. They get crazy. This one's like way less than a grand. That's pretty affordable. I'm not an affiliate, but
Yeah. I would say the only thing to keep in mind with that is making sure that you're not pulling your body temperature so low that it's creating a stress response on the body. Because that's going to have a lot of negative downstream effects, especially over time. Um, so that would be my only like precaution with that is just make sure you're not getting too cold.
makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. And you could set the temperature on what you want it to be. So um while we're on the topic of sleep, I know a lot of people in the health community Brian Johnson, as I mentioned, a lot of these longevity people say that you shouldn't eat right before bed because your body's going to waste energy on digestion when it should be healing. Uh, but my brain goes, well, I thought it was called rest and digest. So, but I for years I've been eating sometimes right before bed, like an hour before bed. I try to keep it 2 hours before bed, probably the
Mm.
closest, and maybe even 2 to 3 somewhere in there. But I've had no problems. I mean, having a bowl of ice cream right before I go to bed. What are your thoughts on that whole topic? Because I feel like that's a constant thing of debate.
Yeah. Um, well, in general, I would definitely avoid things that cause digestive distress specifically. So, that's one of the reasons that like a lot of raw cruciferous vegetables specifically tend to not be as favorable whenever you're looking at a bioenergetic approach because they do have a lot of digestive inhibitors and irritants that can irritate the gut. So that's really important in general. I would also say that experiment with what you're eating before bed. I do typically recommend something that's easier to digest that will digest a little bit quicker. Um, just because a lot of people, whenever they lay horizontally, they're going to have a little bit of indigestion and stuff like that. That's going to have a negative impact on their sleep and stress them out even further because that's a very uncomfortable thing to deal with at night. Um, so, number one, I would say, like, if you're having an extremely heavy meal, definitely have that, at least a few hours before you go to sleep. But whenever it comes to kind of topping off the sugar stores for the night, so to speak, so your body has plenty to work with throughout the night. Um, I don't see a problem with having that as close to bedtime as you can get it, if that's what you want to do. Just make sure that it's easy to digest and it's not something that's going to give you kind of that interruption and discomfort whenever it comes to indigestion and having to deal with a really full stomach whenever you're trying to sleep and that can be hard on people. And then just generally whenever it comes to digestion, um, even if it is a rather pro-metabolic food, if it makes your digestion upset and you get loose stools or you get constipated, um, avoid it. Just take it out, find something else to replace it with. And maybe over time, as your metabolism heals, you'll have the resiliency to be able to add that back in. Um, but don't be afraid to take things out that mess with your digestion specifically, because that's a key marker to health is how good is your digestion and whether or not you're experiencing trouble digesting foods.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of people probably just aren't. They're so used to feeling crappy that they just get used to it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Um, And whenever it comes to the snack before bed, one of the things that I see a lot of people struggle with is waking up at night. Usually it's around midnight to like 4 in the morning. Uh, a lot of people, what happens is they run out of, their body doesn't have the ability to store enough sugar in their liver in the form of glycogen to make it throughout the entire night. And so if they don't have that snack right before bed, what happens is the body will burn through all of the available sugar. It'll ask the liver for the stores. It'll burn through all of those stores. And then by that time, you'll have a stress response burning through all of the liver glycogen. And whenever the stress hormones hit, that adrenaline initially hits, and then that cortisol will have a more slow rise. Um, that's whenever you start to see that waking up at midnight to around 4 a.m. in the morning. And at that point, your body needs more glucose in order to relax because relaxation is actually something that's very energetically demanding. It actually takes a lot of energy to be able to relax. One of the things that you can think about in reference to that is whenever a mammal dies, or really anything dies, whenever it has the inability to produce a sufficient amount of energy, it becomes tense. In dead people specifically, it's called rigor mortis. It's a stiffening of the body. So relaxation actually requires a lot of energy. And so you need to resupply your body with some glucose to be able to produce more energy in order to get into a relaxed state whenever you wake up at night like that. And having a snack right before you go to sleep allows you to kind of top off those stores so you can make it further throughout the night without having a disruption in sleep.
Mm. Yeah, a couple. That was awesome. You gave me a couple more things I want to ask you.
Okay, sounds good.
First thing, nocturia. This is something that I experienced, and it solved itself without changing anything. So, like urinating in the middle of the night, and I've heard like for a while, for months straight, I would get up to pee in the middle of the night just once, and a lot of people chimed in and told me, well, that's, excess cortisol, kind of like what you were just talking about. Like, my liver's not storing enough glycogen to make it through the night, and the stress hormones. I think it was Dr. Scott Schur on my podcast that I was talking to him about that, the methylene blue guy. And he said it might not be that you have to urinate. It might just be the stress that's getting you up and you think you have to urinate or something like that. But
Mm,
at any rate, it solved itself without me changing anything, without me changing my supplements, maybe just a lifestyle change. But I'm curious your thoughts on urinating at night, if you've ever experienced it, if you've helped people with that, because you hear different things, right? That it's, recently I found a cool supplement, rye pollen, because I'm always trying new stuff. And that's been used for benign prostate hyperplasia for years in Russia, I think like 40 years or something like that.
mm.
And a prostate urinary, bladder control connection. And for me, I'm just hyper aware of prostate stuff because like every man at some point supposedly is going to get prostate cancer. So I want to prevent that.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I would say, whenever it comes to sleep disruption in general, under eating is a huge cause of that. So, if you're not getting enough calories in total, and especially if you're not getting enough carbohydrates, then you're probably going to experience some kind of disrupted sleep. Um, in terms of the urination at night specifically, that can also be some kind of mineral imbalance too. Maybe you're not getting enough salt throughout the day, or your magnesium's a little low, or something like that. Um, so there's a little bit of nuance there, but I would say like the under eating is one that I've seen a lot of people struggle with. There was something else that came to mind whenever you were. Could you ask the question one more time?
uh, I mentioned bladder control with prostate health at the end. Um, let's see, the liver glycogen not storing enough.
Oh, yes. So one of the things that's worth mentioning is that over time, as you start to eat frequently and add in more carbohydrates and kind of eat in a more pro-metabolic day, um, your body is naturally going to learn how to store more glycogen in the liver. And over time, you'll become more resilient in your ability to prevent stress by supplying the body with enough energy. And so, um, you were probably eating more in general during that time period, and your body, it just took some time to catch up to what you were feeding it. And over time, it probably started storing more glycogen in the liver just based on how much you were eating, how frequently, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And certain supplements, like my friend sells taurine. I think taurine is one of the nutrients that helps the liver store more glycogen, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I haven't looked at the the way that glucose is stored as glycogen in the liver, that mechanism. I haven't taken a deep dive into that in a long time. Been focused on a lot of the simplification, and honestly, I've been focused a lot on estrogen lately. So that's something that I've seen really prevalent is estrogen dominance here recently. So that's something that I've kind of been taking a good look at.
Yeah, because there's different forms, right? And I know, like it's funny, my realtor, when I moved to Idaho, she was on prescription estrogen, the cream. And at that point, I was so heavy into repeat, I'm like, don't do it. Like, check out this progesterone product, and I think I gave her some or something. But there's estradiol, there's estrone, there's all these different forms, right?
Even progestins that mimic estrogen in the body, that people are being prescribed as progesterone, but it's having an estrogenic impact inside of the system. Um, Yeah, and that goes to something else that I wanted to talk about today was reducing exposure to environmental endocrine disruptors, especially phytoestrogens and things like that, or xenoestrogens that they're molecules that you can get from things like plastics or chemicals and personal care items and stuff like that that have the ability to enter the body and work on the estrogen receptor. So it has a very estrogenic effect inside the body and a very feminizing effect inside the body. Um, so one of the easy things that you can do is just make a concerted effort to eliminate as much plastic from your life as possible. So, switching the to-go containers for glass or stainless steel, that's a big one. And the storage containers in your fridge and stuff like that, like switching those out for glass or stainless steel. Filtering your water is another big one that I see. Like, there's not enough people out there that filter their water. Some people even think because they're getting, um, a highly rated water, but and a lot of times it's still like municipal water. They don't realize that there's still a bunch of chemicals being dumped in it all the time. Um, you know, Filter the water. If you can't afford like a super high quality filter, just get the one that you can afford right now. Work to upgrade later, but do the best that you can. 'Cause it's definitely worth filtering your water. Our water supply nowadays, especially in America, is extremely toxic. Unfortunately, there's all kinds of pharmaceuticals and um, chemicals from water runoff and plastics and hormones from other people inside of our water. So, um, yeah, just eliminate that by filtering the water that's you best you can. And I know that you've done a lot of experimentation in that realm, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on the water filtration.
I appreciate that you brought that up. Yeah, actually, this property, I'm on 20 acres, which is plenty of room for me, and it's on a spring, fortunately, and it's the lightest water I've ever drank in my life. And I used to be, a spring water connoisseur back in the day when I was in that world. And there's still some calcium and iron in it, but it still feels so light. There's like a mouthfeel to water if you get sensitive, you can tell the difference. I'm going to be testing this water of 142 different things using my tap score. So I have this huge box and it looks at like PFAs, which are actually in wells. As you mentioned, I mean, the contamination is just unbelievable. The VOCs, even radiation, um, disinfection byproducts and stuff. So even being on a spring/well, I still run it through a whole house sediment, carbon, ultraviolet light, like 4 structuring devices on my whole house. And then it goes to my drinking under counter. I'm developing a structured water filter that utilizes infrared light, magnets, and a vortexing chamber to structure the water. And after all that, I mean, it is amazing water, like the lightest water. Like I actually prefer it to the deuterium depleted water from Russia that I have. That's light water. It's great stuff, but I actually prefer my own water now when I'm like in the wood burning sauna sweating. But yeah, it's one of those things to me. It's one of the most important things you could change in your health routine. And you had great advice of do what you can. I mean, when I was working job to job and just didn't have a lot of money, I did the uh, carboy thing. So I did a Better Bottle. I think there's Better Bottle, and then there's glass carboys for brewing beer. Both of those, you're not going to get as many contaminants versus like the BPA free, conventional jugs that people use for water storage. So those are two good options with like a ceramic water crock. And I did that for years living in an RV or in an apartment. I would just pick up like 30, 40 gallons at a time, fill up my sedan, drive home, get my workout in, keep them, like wine, cold and dark as possible out of direct light. And yeah, it's just one of those things like you do the best you can. People say like distillers are harmful. And I've said that before. If all you can afford is a mega home distiller, it is better than tap water for sure. It's just you better buy distilled white vinegar in bulk to be cleaning that thing. Because if you're distilling LA tap water, you're going to be cleaning that thing with vinegar. It's going to be a full-time job to keep
Mm.
that distiller clean. So I would say the most practical option is finding like a water store or a water dispenser where they maintenance it regularly and filling up those jugs. That'll be the least time investment, least monetary investment, and then save up. And you should not pay more than $2,000 for a water filter. Right now, I think a Fora is like $5,000 for hyper oxygenated water.
Mm.
It's like that's just they raised the price by like $2,000 in a couple of years. So that's just ridiculous markup. That I guess that shows the demand for structured water units. So mine will be 2,000 is my price point that I'm shooting for. Not to make this a big commercial, but but it's a reverse osmosis and DI, which stands for deionization. So between those two, you're removing almost 100% of contaminants as far as acids, organic pollutants, stuff like that, metals and things like that. So yeah, for brewing coffee, I have a Italian La Marzocco espresso machine that I love. All my coffee's brewed with that water. It doesn't stay structured when it's heated to that degree, but
Mhm.
having filtered water in your coffee machine, filtered water to make your broths, to make your soups, your pasta. I think people don't realize how nice it is to have at your kitchen sink filtered water to wash your veggies. And in a perfect world, you have a whole house filter on a well or a spring plus a drinking water filter. That is the perfect setup. That's what I've had for years. And I think that is the way to go for
Hmm.
sure.
What's your experience with reverse osmosis? I know a lot of people have like the under the sink reverse osmosis, like the little tanks that fill up and stuff like that. What's your opinion on those?
Yeah, that's what mine will be. So the storage tank, it has a little bladder in it. I think it's 2.6 gallons, somewhere in there. Because people say they grow bacteria and blah blah blah. If it's just one person, then yeah, maybe you want to replace it once a year, every couple of years, something like that. But if you're using it frequently, the water's sterile going in. So people don't realize that reverse osmosis also removes bacteria. So it's not only a UV process, but RO itself will physically remove bacteria. So there's no bacteria to grow that ends up in that storage tank. And if by some chance over months and years that does happen, they're pretty cheap to just easily switch out. It takes 2 seconds.
Hmm.
But
Is there,
you can put a UV light if you have an outlet down there for disposal. There are aftermarket, couple $100. You can do an inline UV if someone really is worried about it.
hmm. Is there something that you recommend, something easy that people could do for remineralizing the RO system? Because like I usually just recommend tossing in a pinch of salt and getting those minerals in that way.
That's really all you need. Yeah, because there's calcite and Corsex are the two medias that companies use to remineralize as the last stage. And one's calcium and one's magnesium, but it's such trace amounts. We're talking very, very, it's not anything you would get supplementally or from salt. So your recommendation is the best, just a pinch of Icelandic or white salt or pure sodium chloride or whatever it is. Yeah, ideally like a clean white sea salt that's not colored, I think. Although I don't think the pink or the gray or colored sea salt, people freak out about the metals. It's such trace amounts. Like I interviewed what's his name? Everything Lead, Eric, and he got into it with Lead Safe Mama because she was doing a lot of scare articles where she was making the levels sound super scary, but she was like conflating the numbers with like kids levels and adult levels. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of math to do with like parts per billion of lead and these metals. You can make the numbers look very scary. And then when you actually take a step back and look at everything in context, you're like, oh, that's a really small amount. So yeah, I think people freak out going back to the nuances. Like, I wouldn't eat Himalayan salt exclusively, but if you're traveling, it's not going to kill you to have, a meal with Himalayan salt with the iron and C4 residue, whatever's on that.
Hmm. Definitely. Um, One of the things that I also do that I travel around with is a little shower head filter. So I got one that you can just put behind the shower head and install on there by screwing it on. Um, what do you use in your house for that?
Nothing. So with the whole house filter, I don't need that. But when I'm traveling, that's very smart. I actually sell uh, KDF 55. My friend Austin makes. So it's a what's nice is you can open it, so you can actually unscrew it and air out the filter. So like what you're talking about, when I go down to see my family in California, I bring it with me if I'm staying at a Airbnb, and so that mold doesn't grow in there. A lot of these you can't open up. With this one, you could actually unscrew the housing, put it out in the sun, like completely dry it out, so that you're not just you could reuse it basically. And it's a
Mhm.
skip KDF 55, which is really the main media that removes chlorine. There's KDF 85. There's even like some media that removes fluoride called SR 900. But I think really the name of the game is volume more than I kind of make this analogy with supplements. Like, I'm kind of anti 7 different forms of magnesium in a capsule. Like, I just want glycine and taurine. Like, more is not better because you're actually diluting the in what you're getting. So that's kind of the same goes for specifically shower filtration. I don't want 8 different forms of media that's, cut into eighths in a cartridge. I want only 55 and a huge amount of it because I want
Mhm.
chlorine out at the hotel. And that's really what you want to focus on. So having a big enough filter basically and the right media. Because if you buy one at Home Depot, they use like prills and all sorts of garbage in there, magnetic stuff. And it's like, yeah, it might be cool, but it's like you just don't want to shower in chlorine. Is that
Yeah.
so? Yeah, great recommendation. The travel stuff's huge. I mean, if it's just when I go down to California, it's in and out. It's only one full day, and then I'm getting back home to safety in Idaho, where it's actually a free country. But yeah, I still bring all my supplements and stuff just because I don't want to get sick and I don't want to come back home drained. So I bring my shower filter, I bring my supplements, you know, the things where I could keep feeling good. Um,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're nomads right now, so we don't really have a home. So the shower filter comes in handy whenever we're, going from house to house or place to place. But even for people who can't afford like a more advanced filter, getting that shower filter can make a big difference for your skin, for your hair, and always the elimination of those chemicals from getting into your body because your skin's gonna interact with anything that you put on it. I think that that's very overlooked by a lot of women specifically, honestly, with a lot of the personal care items that they use, the hair care items and stuff like that. Um, your body is going to interact with anything that you put onto it. So be intentional with what it is that you're using in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done long experiments where I don't sweat in a sauna and I felt the difference. Same thing with taking breaks from red light, like a big red light panel that I have from Gemba Red. Uh, those are 2 things. I don't know all the mechanisms, but those two, if I'm consistent with them, are like 2 of the most important practices that I do.
Mm, yeah. I could see that the sauna has probably a pretty big like estrogen detox effect to it. Like I could imagine that you're getting a lot of that estrogen out from your sweat and um, kind of balancing the estrogen to progesterone ratio a little bit better that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to retest my testosterone because I have a cool pharmacist friend in town that could do all the testing for me.
Nice.
Last time I measured it, though, it was really, really high, like above 1200. And I was eating a lot of oysters, a lot of beef, sufficient carbs, elk antler, velvet, and shilajit, and using sweating regularly. I think I had like a heat lamp set up in my RV, so I built like a homemade sauna with a tent. But that combination, yeah, it looked like I was a TRT user.
Wow. I mean, that's a good place to be.
Because that's trending right now, right? You mentioned at the start that they wanted to put you on that at 18 and 19. I think JP Sears is promoting it now, the X3 guy. A lot of people are promoting uh, TRT as if it's like normal and not harmful and microdosing it. So
Hmm.
I've had the option, and I have the option of having a friend that's on it in town, pharmacist. I just don't want to be reliant on something, and especially with my like prepping mindset, not like doomsday, but just I don't want to be reliant on exogenous supply of something like that. Like a
Hmm.
foundation.
No, I'm on the same boat. I think that the reliance on a pharmacy is something that it's stressful within itself. There's a lot of mental stress that goes into having to rely on um, a building to get your supply from, so to speak. Um, but you know, I go back and forth with whether or not it's okay to supplement with it at a certain age and within a certain range and things like that. I know that Ray had talked about using minuscule doses on a daily basis, just like 1 to 2 milligrams to mimic the natural secretion of testosterone. But that was also a man who was 80 in his 80s, and probably needed that extra support just to maintain regular function. Um, but whenever it comes to younger individuals, I'd say, if you're under the age of 65, 70, then your body still has plenty of resiliency to be able to bring those levels up. And whenever you get a testosterone test and you test low, um, there's a tremendous amount of factors that go into testosterone test being low like that. The amount of stress that you had going into that test, whether or not you were well fed going into that test, the amount of estrogen that you have in the system going into that test that's combating the testosterone, whether or not you're severely hypothyroid and have secondary hypogonadism, which was actually what happened to me is I had tanked my thyroid levels, which ultimately ended up in my testosterone levels tanking out. And once I got thyroid back on track, it allowed for the rest of that axis, so to speak, to get back on board, especially whenever I got the micronutrients dialed in and things like that. Um, but yeah, there's a tremendous amount that goes into that decision. And just know that if you get on it, it's something like um, once you get on the juice, you're never the same without the juice, so to speak. Like you're making it's a lifelong decision because you're going to be impacted tremendously by it, and you're going to be relying on it for a very long time. And so, yeah, it's a difficult decision for people to make. It's a shortcut for a lot of people, but there's a lot of things that need to be checked off before even considering something like that.
Yeah. I posted a funny video a couple weeks ago on social media where it was the guy being interviewed on looks maxing, and he was saying all these health influencers telling you to ground and naked sunbathe and eat steak every day. He's like, a lot of people don't have the time for that. Just go on TRT. That was like his solution. This was like in his early 20s. Yeah, on
Hmm.
TRT. It's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that, there's also a lot of problems with the current way that testosterone is used nowadays. Like the suspension liquid that a lot of the synthetic hormones are suspended in nowadays are very, very toxic. Um, so that's something to take into consideration. They're usually like some kind of weird unsaturated oil with additional chemicals in there on top of the hormones. So there's all kinds of things that you're putting in your body if you're using an injection. The creams, same thing. There's all kinds of things that you're putting on your skin and absorbing through that massive organ. And then the oral forms, like there's a lot of cancer potential whenever it comes to adding in a steroid like that because it's extremely anabolic. And whenever you promote something that causes cellular division like that, you're keeping that pathway open for, you know, potential things to come to fruition, such as like cancerous cells having a kind of a free path to come about. So,
That's
um,
works with breast cancer, right? It's like a catalyst for cell division.
can
That's
you
like,
say, can you say that again?
oh, like the role of estrogen in breast cancer. Like I know some like Harvard Medical School has had articles on that where they talk about how estrogen promotes the growth of breast cancer cells and the division.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah.
It's not just breast. So yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Estrogen is it's extremely anabolic, but the thing about estrogen is and one of the problems that it has in causing mutations and stuff like that is it causes cellular swelling and it causes cells to separate before they have the chance to mature fully. And so those cells are then inadequate. And then those cells are also replicating at an accelerated rate because they're still in a very estrogenic environment. And then that is leading to a higher rate of cancerous cells becoming prevalent in the system, so to speak.
and the solution to estrogen, like you mentioned, the sauna, like vitamin E is one of those, right? And just supporting your metabolism in general.
Yeah, vitamin E is really awesome. I don't know if you've seen some of the mechanisms where um, its antioxidant properties allow it to be able to protect like progesterone and pregnenolone and stuff like that from turning into cortisol and going through the stress pathway. And so it protects those and helps to reserve those for the protective hormones later on um, being developed from those precursor hormones. Um, Vitamin E is great. Obviously, just make sure that you're not deficient in it. And if you do add in some PUFAs, then it can help prevent the oxidation of some of those fats whenever they enter the system. So it kind of acts as like a protection mechanism. If you do find yourself having to go into like a social situation or something like that, you can just pop a vitamin E or two and um, not be in as bad of a spot as you would have been if you wouldn't have taken anything. Um, Obviously, like don't become orthorexic and stress too much about it because that's going to be a stress in and of itself and goes back to the beginning of the episode, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a good burger spot I go to in town, and I think they cook the fries in peanut oil, but I take vitamin E. I have my high fructose corn syrup free ketchup that I bring with me. I bring my Mexican Coke in glass, and I think I usually have just a burger bowl without the bun. And I feel generally pretty good after that meal. I
Yeah.
don't know, I mean, it's probably once or twice a month, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, getting out, being social and having a good time, like um, all of that's super important for a healthy metabolism. Um, Play is super important too. I think that that's one that not enough people implement into their daily lives. Like they're so focused on work and having to take care of all their responsibilities and things like that. Um, Whenever one of the most pro-metabolic things that you can do is just slow down and enjoy something. Enjoy messing around with your dog or your significant other or your kids or something like that. Just take a breath. Sometimes just being present and in the moment. Can kind of unlock a little bit of hidden metabolism in there, so to speak.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that since I moved back home. Just that breath of relief and going out and kayaking on my lake. And yeah, that is definitely the most healing thing. I could attest to that strongly. I did want to ask you about uh, coffee and caffeine in general, because I've had a fun journey with those in the context of both keto and eating a more balanced diet, you know, after, because when I did this extreme, like 23 hours a day fasting. This was, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, quite a while ago now, probably 6 years ago or something, where I was eating one meal a day, pretty much a 1 hour eating window, and just doing uh like teas all day. So starting my day with like I think it was like black coffee with stevia, and then doing like uh hibiscus and rooibos tea and different teas while I was weightlifting and deadlifting. And I got pretty jacked because I was breaking the fast with a 12 amino acid shake that I custom made myself from bulk supplements. It was like a big ordeal. I like made a huge tub, like mixing all the powders by hand. And it was mainly beans and soy, kind of like the anti-rape heat diet. And it was just interesting that I was gaining quite a bit of muscle on that, but I was definitely psychologically, maximally stressed. And then learning repeats work after that, I added in breakfast, and really emphasizing getting enough protein with breakfast and sugar with breakfast, and then having my coffee after. And that's when I started the whole maple syrup and coffee every morning thing, which I've been doing for the last 5 years. And just that difference of having the sugar in the coffee with the heavy cream post breakfast, it feels like part of the meal now, where a lot of people bash it on social media, and they say green tea is better, or coffee is burnt bean juice and you don't need it, and it's just over marketed or whatever. That's one of my favorite things about what Ray shared, is talking about not only the health benefits of coffee, but he had a whole article on caffeine's benefits, which, like, people hate hearing that because they're like, oh, it's a toxin. But he was
Hmm.
an antioxidant, and that molecule alone has so many benefits, right?
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. So I think that it's important to be cognizant of the response that the stimulant gives you. And this goes along with nicotine, which I know you're a big proponent of. I do think that if it's from a decent source, then it can be beneficial, especially because it's anti-aromatase activity. Um, but yeah, so whenever it comes to coffee, and I'm specifically talking about caffeinated coffee, not necessarily decaf in this spiel, but yeah, I think that you're doing it perfectly in terms of making sure that you're well fed before you drink the coffee, having it kind of slowing down the stimulation of it with the cream, and then allowing for more energy to go into the system to be able to handle that stimulation with uh, the syrup that you're adding to it. I think that if you're very sensitive to caffeine, though, it can elicit an adrenaline response. So some people still can get a stress response from coffee, specifically from the caffeine. And I've noticed it with nicotine as well. People kind of stay in this sympathetically dominant state because they don't have the ability to utilize the caffeine in a pro-metabolic way, because their body's hindered in, whether it's the liver or their digestive system's kind of messed up or things like that. They can't utilize it properly, and so it causes a stress response for them. So if you drink coffee and then after you drink it, you notice that you start to get really loud heartbeats, your hands are kind of shaky, maybe your fingers and your toes freeze up, those kinds of things. Then I would probably dial back on the coffee, either lower the amount that you're trying to drink during that time period, or just cut it out completely for a while. Because you want to stay out of that sympathetically dominant state as much as you can, unless you're getting into it for a very specific reason. one example of that would be like fighting, for example. I love to work with fighters and stuff like that. I did jujitsu for, I still train here and there, but I did it for probably 4 or 5 years and I love it, but it's extremely hard on the body because you're literally training yourself to enter into that fight mode. It's fight or flight and you're fighting. Um, so, buffering that in the fighters is something that's extremely important, but um, yeah, that sympathetically dominant state is something that you want to spend as much time out of as you can and in the kind of rest, digest, and reproductive state. Um, so if you notice that coffee gives you that stress response, I would move away from it. But, in terms of the benefits of coffee, like, one of the number one things that people experience with coffee is better digestion. They actually get a bowel movement going with the coffee. And so that's something that I really like to see. Um, especially if you're backed up, if coffee stimulates the bowels for you, that is a tremendous benefit that is not worth giving up because you're getting rid of so much through that fecal matter from estrogen to all kinds of toxins. And, the longer that it sits in your digestive tract, the more likely you are to reabsorb that through the gut. So you don't want that estrogen to get back into the system in that way. Um, and even if it has kind of been broken down by the liver and the bile and stuff like that, it can still have some activity whenever it's reabsorbed. So, um, that elimination is an extreme benefit of coffee, in my opinion. Um, and then it has a lot of benefits for the liver specifically. Um, Keeping it lean in particular is something that coffee is really good at. So it helps kind of helps like export fat from the liver in a better way, and helps with a lot of the different detoxification processes in there. So um, those are kind of the two main things: the liver benefits, the digestion benefits, and then yeah, making sure that it doesn't cause that stress response. Because if it does have that stress response, then it can kind of backfire on you. So the benefits might not really be worth the squeeze on that one, so to speak.
Do you think people can use it to gauge how well their liver's storing glycogen? That's kind of how I've used it and how I've heard it. Like if you go overboard, like generally these days, my routine is I just do one espresso shot, which I think is 90 milligrams of caffeine, give or take, roughly, I believe. And then I do like a kava kratom, really small amounts, 25 milligrams of kratom full spectrum extract, 125 milligrams of kava, 30 milligrams of caffeine. It's like a little energy drink. So
Mm.
an average day, I'm having like 120 milligrams, which is relatively small. I think some repeaters have talked about, being into the hundreds of milligrams, 3, 4, 500 milligrams a day of caffeine, which for me, I would have to be eating quite a bit of calories to feel okay doing that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Um, I mean, yeah, it definitely is a good indicator of whether or not your liver is able to process that caffeine well. I don't really know if I would use it as an indicator as to whether or not the liver is storing enough glycogen. Um, I would, if I was to look at that, I would look more at sleep and whether or not somebody's waking up at night. That's more indicative of whether or not the liver is storing sufficient glycogen, in my opinion, as well as how long they can go without food before experiencing hypoglycemic symptoms. Um, so yeah, I'm not really sure about the storage of glycogen in the liver with coffee, but it can definitely help, you know, increase a lot of the detoxification pathways, like the efficiency of them and stuff like that whenever it comes to caffeine.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up nicotine because this morning, you probably know the keto guy, Ben Bickman. He did a video recently on nicotine, talking about how it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system and increases like epinephrine, norepinephrine. Nicotine increases lipolysis, and just all like the cellular effects of it, contributing to insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, and systemic inflammation. Like to me, it's looking at it in isolation, like outside of a system of adequate nutrition, adequate vitamin C, vitamin E, adequate endogenous antioxidants like glutathione peroxidase, catalase, all those adequate hormones. Like just, I mean, it's just funny that uh, these people kind of look at things in isolation and they're not looking at the whole picture.
Hmm. Yeah. One of the indicators that Ray used a lot to determine whether or not something was eliciting a positive response was whether or not the thyroid has the ability to respond to it properly. Um, so, like a lot of the eustress that a lot of these people experience from like cold showers or things like that that are supposed to have a positive impact on inflammation or things like that from real brief exposure to the sympathetic state, increasing those stress hormones really fast and then bringing them back down. Um, if your thyroid doesn't respond to those things properly, and this can be the same for like an excitatory state for nicotine or coffee, if your thyroid doesn't respond properly to those in a healthy way, you're going to stay in that stress state for too long to where it starts to become excessively damaging. Um, I don't really think that the eustress from like cold showers and stuff like that is a good idea to begin with because there's um, a lot of people who are very, very sick implementing those and just destroying their body even more. Um, and you don't want to layer stress on top of stress on top of stress, you know? Um, so going out of your way to add in more stress from cold exposure specifically is just one of the most absurd things that you could do in order to try and achieve better health. Like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me.
Yeah, and it's promoted as like the optimal morning routine for everybody from what I'm seeing. Like almost
Mhm.
every CEO video I see of their morning routine, it's like I go in the ice bath at 36, 37 Fahrenheit, before I hit the gym or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah. It's usually wake up, take my injection of testosterone, make sure that I got a good boost of HGH in there. Let's hop in the cold plunge, make sure that's going, get my adrenaline and cortisol going, and now I'm gonna fast until dinner time. Let's do this.
yeah, kind of like the live fast, die young, protocol is kind of the popular one now. I'd rather live longer and healthier and like break down faster. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. But let's see. We have some questions that people sent in. Do you want to end on these as we start to wrap up the show?
Yeah, let's do it. I'd love to.
Okay, awesome. There's just four of them that I could see so far. So his take on supplementing NDT and Sinomel or Sinoplus.
Hmm. Yeah, so I would say, if you're going to supplement with thyroid hormones specifically, you need to make sure that you have the foundation set in order for them to have a positive impact to be successful. Um, so, have you eliminated all of your micronutrient deficiencies? That's one that is extremely important. You don't want to be deficient in a bunch of B vitamins and then be adding a bunch of thyroid hormone into the system that's going to need those B vitamins in order to produce energy. Um, uh, so the micronutrient deficiencies is a big one. Make sure that you're eating properly, especially carbohydrate, eating enough. Um, a lot of people are under eating, then they're trying to push in thyroid and they're constantly hypoglycemic and start to get a stress response from the thyroid because they don't have the energy in the system to be able to handle the stimulatory effects of thyroid. Um, so ensuring that you're eating enough, you're eating frequently enough, you don't have any of those micronutrient deficiencies. And also, I would recommend tracking your pulse and temps so you can understand what the impact is that it's having on you. Um, you know, Thyroid can be extremely beneficial for some and cure all of their problems. Others, it might have a negative impact initially, and you got to figure out what that is before you can start using it again. And so, um, it's going to be different based on what your current biochemistry looks like and what the current state of your metabolism looks like. It can be an extremely powerful tool, especially for older individuals who have maybe been hypothyroid for quite a while and don't have as much resiliency built up in their system. Um, but for younger folks, like I don't really think that it's something that's necessary. I mean, your body has the ability to heal and to get into that place. And unless you've had some kind of physical damage to your thyroid or you've had like a thyroidectomy or something like that, um, there's no reason to add that in until much later in life.
I don't know if I asked you, I don't think I did during the show. What if someone has like a low appetite? Because you mentioned eating enough, eating frequently. What if someone's just not hungry? What do you usually tell them?
hmm Um, so liquids go a long way. So getting in more liquid calories just to be able to provide your body with some kind of energy, that goes a long ways. Something else too is like if you're not getting nauseous and it's just an aversion to eating or you don't think about eating, um, set a timer on your phone for like, every 3 hours or so, and just go have a snack, whatever it is. Um, obviously make sure that it's as pro-metabolic as you can get it. And it'd be ideal if it was balanced with some protein, carbs, and some fats. But um, just practice eating on a consistent basis. And over time, as your metabolism increases, your appetite will come back to you. Um, if you look around in nature or if you observe the animals that you have, one of the first things that happens whenever they get sick is that they stop eating. And so, appetite, I think that, what is it, East West Healing? He always says, you want to be happy, hungry, and horny. Hunger is an extremely important factor in a healthy system. Appetite shows that your body's using the energy that you're giving it and it wants more. So, yeah, liquid calories can go a long ways. And then having faith that that appetite will be restored whenever your metabolism gets into a healthier state. Um, those are kind of the main ones that I've been able to help people with, and also making your meals a little bit more enjoyable so you look forward to them. So eating things that you actually like instead of just trying to mimic a meal plan that somebody gave you on Instagram or something like that. Um, yeah, make your meals enjoyable and it should be a little bit easier to eat.
What do you think about snacking on cheese as far as snacks, like a good cheese that someone likes? I think in that documentary on the back of a tiger, Ray was just munching on cheese, like a block of
Mhm.
cheese.
Well, dairy specifically, like milk and cheese, there probably is, you know, one of the more perfect foods that you can get that we have available to us. They have a natural balance of proteins, carbs, and fats in them. So, and the calcium, like you can't overlook the calcium that, one of the things that um, we could have talked a little bit about today is just making sure that you're getting in enough minerals in general. So magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium, all of those are extremely important for a healthy metabolism, healthy nervous system, all that good stuff. Um, Calcium in particular, if you're eating a diet that is very high in muscle meats, then you're going to want to get in more calcium, and that's usually done with dairy. Um, and I think that that's one of the reasons that Ray ate it so frequently is so he could counter a lot of the effects of the phosphate or the phosphorus that he was eating in other areas of it of his diet. So um, I like cheese. I think that it depends on whether or not you're trying to mitigate weight gain and stuff like that too on the diet, because you start to pile in a lot of the fatty foods on the repeat diet. It's a lot easier to pack on the pounds on the repeat diet in that case too. So, um, if you're not being conservative with calories and you enjoy the cheese, then I think that it's a fantastic snack and and the fat definitely helps slow down the digestion and kind of extend the energy release, so to speak. But yeah, I'm a big fan of cheese personally. I think that it's great, but yeah, it definitely depends on how conservative you're trying to be with the weight gain and stuff like that too.
Yeah. For someone like myself, it's super hard to gain weight, either fat or muscle. I mean, it's a little easier to gain muscle, but Um, I know a lot of people, it's kind of the opposite. It's easy for them to gain a lot of body fat. So yeah, for someone like me, I could eat unlimited cheese and I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm jealous because I'm definitely not that way.
This is a good question. How can women optimize nutrition and supplementation during the postpartum period?
Ooh. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume that it was a natural birth and it wasn't like a C-section or something like that. Although these are gonna be good tips for either situation. I think that it's a lot easier to recover from a natural vaginal birth versus a cesarean. Um, but obviously, meal frequency is going to be very important. Eating more calories than you think that you need in order to be able to produce enough breast milk for your infant is extremely important. I think that that's often overlooked. Um, so, especially carbohydrate and protein, like making sure that you're getting a sufficient amount of carbohydrate and protein to fuel the production of that milk for your baby. Because there's a tremendous amount of sugar in breast milk, and um, if you don't have the ability to supply that in there, your body's going to figure out how to get it in there for the next generation to be able to move on. Um, so why not just go ahead and supply your body with what's going to be in there? Um, so the frequent meals, definitely making sure that you're eating enough. And I feel like I'm talking about the same things, and I talk about the same things quite often, but it's because those are the main principles that work and are the highest leverage factors in my opinion. And so I'll definitely uh, repeat myself quite a bit whenever I'm talking about stuff, but it's because I want you to remember these things and have them on top of your mind. Um, Whenever it comes to healing that as well, I would say definitely increase like the collagen and the glycine intake and stuff like that to be able to help repair a lot of the skin and stuff that has to be um, normalized after that time period. There's a lot of stretching and stuff that goes on. There's a lot of like relaxin that's produced to, open up joints and make things more flexible and all of that good stuff. So increasing that collagen specifically and that vitamin C to help with collagen synthesis inside of the body is going to be really important. Um, you also, if you have the ability to, it would be a good idea to go ahead and get a micronutrient test done, probably like a couple weeks after you have the baby. That way you can just make sure that um, experience hasn't caused some kind of micronutrient deficiency. You're experiencing a lot of blood loss, a lot of fluid loss, all kinds of crazy things. Um, so you want to make sure that you're not deficient and you're able to have the raw materials that your body needs in order to heal itself as well as continue to produce what it needs for the next generation that you're bringing up. Um, Outside of that, in terms of supplementation and stuff, you might try a little bit of progesterone. Progesterone is going to kind of help bring you back to balance, kind of help prevent the estrogen rebound that might happen from the stressful experience itself. Um, and also, um, it's important to get menstruation back after you're pregnant and have had that baby. And um, progesterone is very beneficial in helping alleviate amenorrhea for a lot of women. And so, using a little bit of progesterone can be very beneficial. Um, that's really the main one that I've seen in terms of supplementation that would be beneficial in my opinion. I wouldn't go crazy with anything. Your body is just gone through a whirlwind of things, given birth and stuff. So you don't want to throw too much at it that it's unfamiliar with and has to kind of understand before it's able to heal itself. So um, I would probably keep it pretty simple. Maybe use the progesterone a little bit if you need to. Make sure you don't have any micronutrient deficiencies, um, and then just relax. Do walking, no heavy exercise or anything like that. Yeah, just take it easy and heal and enjoy having a new baby.
That was awesome. Yeah, beef liver and oyster, either in supplement and or whole food, can help too, right? Is uh,
Yes.
I just
Uh,
posted my Instagram last week, like cow's milk doesn't have as much copper as mother's breast milk, which is interesting.
Hmm.
It's transmitting the copper to the baby, which is required for collagen in the baby and so many other things. I mean, collagen for the mom, for the lysyl oxidase enzyme, and for cytochrome C oxidase production, you need copper and all these things. So, yeah, then she can get that from beef liver and oysters, which will then transmit through the milk to the baby.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that, even during pregnancy, like the liver is crucial. Getting probably, 2 to 3 ounces in at least twice a week is what I would recommend. Because your nutrient needs go up quite tremendously during pregnancy as you're literally pushing nutrients to another living being inside of you. Um, and even so, whenever you're still nurturing that baby after the fact, you need to make sure that you're providing yourself with as many nutrients as possible, and liver is the easiest way to do that. And, in terms of the taste and stuff like that, a good liver pate is always a good option. It's hard to go wrong with a good pate if you do it right.
That's awesome. That's great. Um, do PUFA skincare products cause damage in the long run?
Uh, yes. That, um, yeah, so, PUFAs in general, they're very sensitive molecules. So the polyunsaturated fatty acids, they have those double bonds that are very easily broken whenever it's exposed to heat or light, relatively high heat or light. And so the human body is a relatively high heat organism. Like we produce a relatively high amount of heat. Whenever the polyunsaturated fats are exposed to that, they go through a process called autooxidation, which they basically automatically break down in the presence of heat or light. And so putting them on your skin causes that, ingesting them causes that. Um, there's some arguments that maybe it's not as harmful if you do mix it in with vitamin E on the skin, but I think over time, there is a decent amount of absorption that happens. It starts to get into the fat tissues and stuff like that. And then it can start to cause inflammation that way. Um, so, in essence, yes, it can be damaging, especially in the long term. I would switch it out for the things that are like coconut oil based, tallow based, butter based, those kinds of things, getting more of those saturated fats in there. Um, Coconut oil actually has a natural amount of vitamin E in it too, so you get an additional antioxidant effect with the coconut oil. So I really like that. Cocoa butter is also another one that I've used intermittently that seems to work really well, and it's hard as a rock at room temperature, so it's extremely saturated. Um, so that's another option. Those are actually the cocoa butter is really nice if you get like a brick of it. You can just kind of chip a piece off and take it with you, so it's a little bit easier to carry around instead of trying to, carry around a can of coconut oil or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I found Ray Peat's work, I started connecting it with my experiences and talking about skincare and its relation to sunlight. Like I remember being at like a Renaissance fair or some festival and eating fried foods and immediately noticing skin sensitivity from the coconut oil and the oxidized fats that I was consuming. Maybe I'm just a canary in a coal mine, a really sensitive person, but I could feel that immediately. And um, even recently noticing like a mild copper deficiency and excess like I got a really severe sunburn jet skiing like a month ago. And so I just started to connect the dots. I'm like, wait, I'm on vitamin E, low PUFA, I'm consuming, vitamin C. Why did I get burned so badly? And yeah, I was out there for like 6 hours and, extreme high UV index and midday sun. Next time I'll wear pants. But at the same time, I was like, well, let's reverse engineer this. And I'm like, oh, I've been high dosing zinc for a couple of years. I probably created a mild copper deficiency. So just I added in a small amount of copper, and within almost day one or day two, I felt way less sensitive to ultraviolet. So I think that's something that people can do too with skincare products or, even supplements is I think astaxanthins, that carotenoids promoted way too heavily, where there's so many other things to look at. I mean, just copper and vitamin E alone are way better in my eyes than that.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and orange juice, like the naringenin and apigenin in there, I think those are magnitudes better. And they come from one of the best, most delicious sources possible. I'm a big fan of orange juice, not only because of sugar, but because of all the other benefits it has too.
I'm gonna try to grow that up here. I have a orange tree that's growing pretty decently indoors, so grow it year round and see what I can produce.
That's my goal. If I can have an orange orchard, then I'll be a very happy person.
That's awesome. What are your thoughts on the sugar diet? Last question.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of any kind of extremism. I'm a, one of the ways that you can kind of think about some of Ray P's work is you want to live in a balanced way. You want to be in harmony with yourself and the world around you. Um, and I think that once you take something to the extreme, you're going to swing to the opposite end of the pendulum. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? And so, I think a lot of those extreme diets, and it's one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of fasting is because it creates eating disorders and things like that. So you start to, especially because the sugar diet is being used for weight loss, you start to have fear of adding foods back in the fear that you're going to gain weight excessively, or, you're afraid to go out and have a meal with friends and things like that. So, from that aspect, I'm not a huge fan of it. I do think that the promotion of sugar and the elimination of fear of sugar is one of the beneficial side effects of the sugar diet being so popular. I really hope that it breaks down a lot of barriers for people to show that sugar is not a harmful molecule. It's actually beneficial. So in that aspect, I'm a fan. I think that it's doing really good in that aspect in terms of helping with psychology of the masses. But I think that the utilization of it and the practice of it can lead to some issues, especially if you use it for an extended period of time and it's not just a short duration. Um, there's a lot of micronutrients that you're not able to get from an extremely high carb diet. Something else that people experience on a high carb diet like that is lack of satiation. So you kind of like, you just, you're not full ever. Like you're never satisfied from a meal. You're constantly burning through the stuff that you do eat. It's really hard to like feel full and like you've just had like a good, dense meal because it burns so fast and doesn't sit with you.
Yeah, it's like when I was a fruitarian working at juvenile hall, I would bring in 1 to 2 dozen of bananas for lunch for quite a while. And the bananas were the densest fruit that made me feel full. But on a fruitarian diet, it was, unless like I started to do like coconut almond yogurt and like some dense nuts and seeds, but that was the only thing. I mean, fruit just digests so fast. It is my main source of nutrition. I remember some days my lunch was just oranges, and I was super airy on those days, just having 10 oranges for lunch. And
Mm,
uh, that really helped me to see the importance of protein and balance in a meal. But yeah, it's funny to see them promoting like candy. Like I think here and there, some gummy bears, sugar covered gummies from the store, healthy brands, regardless of the gums in there, that's fine.
mm.
But yeah, to eat them every day, or as like a foundational part of their of their sugar diet is kind of crazy.
Yeah. I know that people aren't a fan of the starches, but there was a diet a long time ago. I'm blanking on the guy who coined it. But it was called the potato diet. And he just ate potatoes for maybe like 3 or 4 weeks and used it as a fat loss technique. Um, so that's something else that has been out there for quite a while that people haven't really acknowledged. And he's been around for 2 to 3 decades, kind of talking about that. So, yeah, the extreme carbohydrate diets aren't something that's really new. I think that the sugar diet in particular is just something that blows a lot of people's mind because they think that they can just eat candy all day and shred the pounds.
Potatoes, that's one thing I want to grow. I tried the cloth bucket method and it came out small. So I'm going to
Mm.
keep trying. Idaho is known for potatoes, so I have to be able to do it. I know some people just build mounds outside and just, make it super messy. And potatoes are, I mean, people have grown them in tires and stuff. It's an amazing food that it's relatively easy to grow.
Yeah, I mean, we've had whole populations on Earth survive off of potatoes. So it's definitely a good food in my opinion. I mean, especially peeled and boiled, well cooked. Um, I really like potatoes. Something you might try is the hay method. I know that that's what they use in colder climates is just covering the top of them in hay.
Okay, I'll look that up. The hay method. Cool. Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if that's the exact name of it, but that's the method that I've observed people using before, and I mean, they get pretty decent, good potatoes from it.
That's awesome. Yeah, years ago I tried just as a meal, as a keto acid experiment. For those that don't know, Ray talked about how, there's incomplete amino acids in the potatoes and it combines with the ammonia in your body and it makes basically essential amino acids. And so I would just eat potatoes with butter and salt. And I felt full, but I didn't feel fully satiated. So I think going forward, I'll just use that as like a midday snack or something. Um, and that's it. Maybe with a steak or something like that. But
Hmm.
yeah, as a standalone meal, I mean, having some sour cream helps, but there's still that lack of actual protein that I've felt in the past eating that as just a sole meal.
Yeah, I mean, our bodies are so smart. Like, we're never going to be able to outsmart our bodies, and I feel like it has the ability to sense whether or not something's missing, and it's going to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Jayton, it was so cool to catch up with you. This was a blast.
Yes, sir. Same to you. I appreciate the time, and yeah, enjoyed myself today.
Awesome. Awesome. Where do you want to send people to your Instagram or
Yeah, so I have Instagram at underscore JMillyRock. And then I also have a school group. So it's called the Metabolic Health Collective. And I have a handful of courses in there. And I do educational posts Monday through Friday in there and interact with people. So um, that one's $29 a month. You get access to the community and everything. So that one is paid, but I put a lot of information out on my Instagram and Facebook too.
amazing? Cool. Well, I think this information is going to help a lot of people um, to at least get started or to clarify confusing things. So, yeah, appreciate you. Thanks for all the information that you share, and stick around as we close out the show. Thanks, Jayden. It's always a great reminder to eat frequently and eat balanced. I think that message cannot be emphasized enough. And I forgot to say during the show that getting pre-made meals, usually if you live near a city, it's a lot easier to do this and the higher quality it tends to be. But basically paying for already prepared meals, if you have the finances to do that, to at least replace one meal. Like, for example, I often do that with my lunch. Recently, I've been doing that with a company that my friend Crystal told me about. It's called Restorative Meals, and they're organic, pasture raised, grass fed, all of the good things that we want to see on our food. And you could either go red meat based or chicken or a blend, and each meal contains carbohydrates, either in gluten free pasta, although I prefer gluten, or rice. And it's really balanced. It's not just paleo and keto, but it actually has all of the macronutrients, and I'll actually add crucial fours, Icelandic sea salt to it, and a good amount of grass-fed butter. And it's just a great thing middle of the day, especially if I'm juggling calls and working with people on my property. I throw it in my steamer Balmuda toaster on the countertop, set it to 350 degrees, heat it up, and I'm ready to go. It's really nice, even just to take away one out of the 3 meals, especially because I live alone and I don't have a private chef. And out here in the forest, I don't have Uber Eats or anything like that, or DoorDash. So I'm on the hook to make all of my meals by myself, 3 meals a day, and it's just a lot. So if anyone else out there is in a similar situation, whether it's restorative meals or some company on par with that, I know Luke Story used to promote model meals, and that's what I ate for years. I actually still have some really old frozen ones in my chest freezer that are probably 3 years old. And when they went out of business, I was really bummed, because it's rare to find a good company that ships straight to your door. A lot of them are just local. So that's just something that I want to emphasize after this show. Finding high quality pre-made meals, it's definitely better than not eating. And having an appetite is a sign of health. But as he said, we should be adaptable, and every once in a while we should be able to skip meals and have that sufficient glycogen, that sufficient sugar utilization, and not go into a blood sugar crash. That resilience is a good marker of health without needing to get a blood test. If you want to check him out on social media, it's _J Millie Rock with 2 L's. He has a lot of great posts, a lot of free information there, and he has that link to his Metabolic Health Collective school. I think he's sharing awesome information, and it could help a lot of people just getting these basics dialed in, especially if you've been spun out with carnivore and keto and all of these extreme diets. And I promise, if you liked my little bit on cod liver oil and the seasonal use of cod liver oil, I promise you I will do a super, super deep dive into that in the future, probably in the middle of winter. My website is matt-blackburn.com. You could read my CLF protocol, which stands for calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. And actually, the show right before this, episode 324, I finally broke down the first letter of the CLF protocol, calcification. And while it was only a 43-minute show, it was jam-packed. I never do commercials, as you guys know. And I shared a lot of information about calcification that I wish I would have heard 15 years ago from a raw vegan guy on stage telling me that raw chocolate was the solution, which is just hilarious. So I'll do the next letter soon, lipofuscin. That's my favorite letter of the protocol, the most interesting in my opinion. So look forward to that continuing series there. And on the website, the matt-blackburn.com, you could see my recommended products. These are things I've found over the years. What makes me unique and maybe cancelable is that I go against the normal biohacker approach of only promoting products that they make good commissions from, because there's a lot of that out there. Most of the products on my website, I would say 95%, I never see any checks in the mail. So that integrity in affiliate marketing, which is what this is, it's not pyramid scheme marketing, it's not multi-level marketing, it's affiliate marketing. That's what I provide with my company, MitoLife, as well, where you either use a discount code and you save and I make commission, or you just click the link and I make commission and it helps support me and the show. So it's really a win-win. and especially because it's products that I believe in. My brand is called Mitolife. Currently, I don't do advertising, haven't done advertising in 5 years, and it's just been super steady support. Really appreciate all of the people that have supported over the years and shared the products with their family and friends. The testimonials continually blow me away. And it's just really humbling to have this level of success without big names promoting me like a lot of products do. They'll pay these influencers a monthly salary basically to give them shout outs on their Instagram story or to do commercials for them. I don't believe in doing that. And that's one of the many things that makes my brand much different from the other supplement companies on the market, let alone most of the bottles are biodegradable. So they'll break down in a landfill, which is really important to me up here in North Idaho, where I don't recycle. I could just throw a Mitolife bottle in my trash can and I don't feel guilty about it because I know it'll break down in 2 to 5 years in a landfill. If you notice on the website, the grass-fed beef liver is coming back by popular demand. People really miss that product. And that is one of the best supplements to take combined with the isolated ones that I talk about, the vitamin E, the vitamin K2, the niacinamide, the zinc or the zinc and the copper. Beef liver just goes perfectly with all of those. And I have a couple friends up here, they've had Mitolife babies, and the Mitolife beef liver was a key part of creating a healthy baby. And I've met their babies. Their eyes are like laser beams, super bright, and they definitely did not have any deficiencies coming out of the womb, which is really cool to see. So that's all for today. There's a new show every Friday. Follow me on Instagram. I'm heavily shadow banned there. It's Matt Blackburn. Mitolife is on Instagram as well. And I'll see you guys next week. Stay supercharged.